Take me to another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land. Magical, magical land. To another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land. Today's guest is the professor of theater arts at the State University of New York and the creative director of White Horse Immersive. Please welcome to the show, David Bassuk. Hey, David, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm great. Good to be with you, Jens.
It's great to see you again. We haven't talked for a couple of weeks now, or months. I even don't know.
I don't know. I think it was February, maybe.
Yeah. So okay, then it's not that long ago.
It's not that long.
Yeah. Good. So before we go into a lot of interesting topics I have in all my notes here, let us know who you are. What is your story? Who are you?
All right. So I'm a theater person. You know, that's my general name for who I am. I'm a theater director, and I've been also an arts administrator. I've been a producer. I've worked in film. I've worked in television, and I've been teaching at the College of Purchase, part of the State University system of New York. And I was the dean of theater and film for a number of years. And when I stepped back from being the dean, I started teaching, and I started a new curriculum, one that combined transmedia, gameplay, immersive, and transmedia storytelling in multiple forms. And so over the course of years, I've been developing new ways for theater people to collaborate with visual artists, can collaborate with dancers, with anthropologists, with arts management people, business people, to begin to rethink what it is to tell a story and to generate an audience. I also have been working in the immersive field. I have a company that was started 2 years ago in China with a former student of mine. And there we have been developing extensions of large IP in the animation field for live performance, both traditional stage and also for immersive performance. And we're also developing other projects, one for a theme park in China based on a Jules Verne piece, and another one which is sort of an escape room in a hotel, which is actually going to be the site of a film as well. So the idea of working cross-platform is not, to me, a surprise. It's actually where the world is heading, because the audiences and people who are interested to engage in narrative are interested in engaging on multiple platforms over longer and longer periods of time. And we rarely see that exploited by players within the field, because they think of it as something that needs a tremendous production budget, but actually one can begin to generate a trail of content from one platform to another, and what is called sometimes in China IP 360, which is that at the center is the IP, but it generates a 360 field of content and engagement.
Yeah. For the listeners who have no idea about what you talk about, can you just elaborate a little bit about what you mean with IP?
Yeah, intellectual property. So that would be, it could be a work of fiction, it could be a product, it could be a brand, whatever is considered the precious commodity of the company. So it could be something that you're licensing, or it's something that you can license. So where we are working with animation companies, we've received a license from them to develop the piece in, let's say, immersive. In a case where we've created the IP, then we license it, like this escape room project. We've actually created the IP and we're licensing it to a film company who's going to work they'll help fund what we're doing, but they also get the use of our IP as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Let's lift things into the different pockets or into your different worlds. So let's start with the teaching.
Okay.
And one thing we just discussed before we started recording, which I just need to repeat. So tell us your definition of teaching as the starting point, and then we dive deeper into what you're teaching.
Well, the real challenge of education, I'll go to the top, the major topic, right? Education, is not the delivery of the knowledge, it's the learning of the knowledge. And most of the time, people who teach focus a lot on how they're going to deliver the information, either by speaking or by reading assignments, informed discussions. And while all of those are very useful, they're not teaching people to learn. They're teaching people to absorb and retain. Teaching people to learn is something that you really can't do, but you can facilitate a process whereby they are forced to learn, encouraged to learn, challenged to learn, which means that the teacher is not so much a mere lecturer, but they are the facilitator of a student journey of engagement. And then you've got the opportunities to create, I call them, from the world of Alice in Wonderland, rabbit holes that they fall into, treasure hunts where they find content. There are times when students, like anyone inside of a game, are frustrated because they're trying to find the answer, but they're motivated by the design. And the design enables them to both struggle, but also to succeed. Whereas the lecture model requires people to copy notes, copy down points, retain phrases. And in an age of internet learning, it's not very competitive. I mean, I often will say, especially to my teaching assistants, I'm not competing with any other teacher. I'm competing with YouTube. Because if the students could learn this on YouTube, and we are living in an age where people can be autodidacts and learn by themselves. So why do they need a class? Well, they need a class because it has been designed for them to learn. And so what I'm attempting to do is rise to the level of competition with online education, even though I'm teaching online.
That's interesting. So, I mean, we're now a year roughly in lockdown, or let's say a year in a different world than we have been in before.
Right.
So what has changed from you from a teaching and educational perspective?
The wonderful discovery was that despite being distant from the students, I could actually make the education more personal. And because I wasn't only working in the Zoom main room, I was working in the breakout rooms with smaller groups and managing multiple breakout rooms. Because I was using off time to connect with them using Typeform as a software, using Topia as a software where they could engage virtually in building things, that there was more time for one-on-one. And then also, to engage with the student advising in a Zoom room is actually very successful. You can bring up documents, they can show you work, you can read it. And the fact that you're physically distant is secondary to the fact that your ideas are much more present to each other. So I find that it's actually incrementally better in terms of developing more personalization. And I think it's also more challenging to find ways to do that. Whereas I think we often professors especially took for granted that if we're in the room with the student, that they're engaged. And there's no face that's very far from me in a Zoom class, whereas the back of the class or the back of the auditorium is actually, it's going to be interesting to challenge to go back to that.
Yeah. So taking innovation into all of this, what did you learn from an innovation perspective in the last year?
To deepen and enrich the user experience, the individual user experience, whereas the design of the class has been aimed at group learning and team building. The accountability for me to them and them to me has also been enriched. So there's less confusion and less hiding, and for me, more responsibility. So as I've raised that level of engagement to not just the class as a whole, the group as a secondary element, but also the individuals within the group, I can observe and watch them working, see and manage the sort of the society within the breakout room in a way that I can move from one breakout room to another. Often in my larger classes, I'll have 6 breakout rooms running with about 6 to 7 students in each breakout room. And I also will have one teaching assistant in each of those breakout rooms. So the teaching assistants and I run a running dialogue on Discord while the students are in Zoom. And sometimes the students in Zoom are also building projects either in Mozilla Hubs online or in Topia online. We've also been doing work in Twine as an app as well. So there are so many different technologies at work, but we're not fetishizing the technology. We're deepening the engagement of people to people.
Yeah. Do you see already results of what's happening with the students over this year compared to before?
Yeah, the course that I taught in the fall, I taught 2 courses in the fall. One was transmedia and performance, and the other one was immersive story worlds. In immersive story worlds, I made the focus moving to virtual. And so everything we did was building towards them ultimately designing an immersive theater piece in a virtual platform. Now, none of them have headsets, so we used Mozilla Hubs where they were able to engage on their desktop. And theater students are very allergic to technology. And by the end of it, I think they were quite happy with the work that they had done. One created a underwater Atlantis. The other one created a Peter Pan forest. Third one created this very sort of scary maze using the Dangerous Game as their immersive story. And I just watched the learning and the facilitation of their comfort in the pieces. It truly helped that I was able to bring in some guests who are working in live theater in VR to sort of help them. In the transmedia and performance class, that course, I have records of what the students had done in the previous semester when we were in person, and the quality of work and the detail of work. There was a level of accountability within the groups because they were all working in a digital hive that truly helped. And even though I say that theater students are often allergic, there are many students for whom the screen is much more a good place for them to work as opposed to in person when they have the challenges. So to some degree, online education has an accessibility advantage for some students who in real life are more introverted or turned away. Online, they can be more present. I remember one student in transmedia and performance, I was thinking this was, this was in gameplay and performance in the spring. So we had half the semester in the real world, and now they're half on Zoom, which is also the real world, but just different. And I remember thinking, this boy with green hair, who is he? Is he a freeloader? Did he just pop in as a friend of somebody? And then I found out, oh, no. That kid who was always like buried in his phone in class, now he's buried in his Zoom camera. So he's present.
That's interesting. Can you already foresee their changes, how they will approach the world after having studied? Do you think it's different to if they would be in the old version only?
Well, what I've heard, so it's anecdotal, is that a lot of this, I've been teaching in a theater conservatory program. And for going on 10 years, I've been encouraging students to not think of their work as theater, but as performance on multiple platforms. Because the word theater is kind of condemning to one venue.
Yeah.
And so now, since theater was unavailable, I said, so if the theater is unavailable, you must actually begin to think of what you're doing as performance and happening on Zoom, in virtual reality, online, in a game, in a this, right? So your engagement. So then if you're doing that in multiple platforms, you need a system for it. You need what I've been teaching for a number of years now, transmedia, cross-platform storytelling, where you generate a web of content for the audience to get caught in and get deeper engaged in. And so now I feel like the COVID has conspired with me to make this more clear.
But it's quite interesting. So that would mean even the students who have finished already before the pandemic hit us, they have been better prepared in a way that compared to students who just thought about theater in one perspective.
That's right. Because even before, among the projects that I've done for a number of years is their final exam for transmedia and performance is the course is taught in the fall. I give them the list of performances that are going to be done in the spring at the campus and to design a trail of content in multiple platforms as a gift to those performances so that they can generate larger, more informed audiences, that the projects also have a way to follow up with the people who came to the show with meaningful. And so once they begin to actually practically say, all right, so there's a senior recital and they're doing, the music of Brahms, right? So create a site about Brahms, create a link of links about the life of Brahms and the music of Brahms, controversies related to Brahms, films that might be, so they've developed this idea of, a number of ships in the ocean floating towards the audience, any one of which the audience can pick up on and follow up. And if the show is over, there's a recording of the performance, and there's a way to fund the artist, and there's a way to generate the next. So thinking about audience-centric design as opposed to producer design, because in the theater, like in many companies, people think about what they are making and what they are selling in the one platform or the one venue. Venue, platform are now the same word in the 21st century, right? So there's no longer venue and platform. There's another word which we don't have yet, which is venue and platform. It's the same. So now, instead of thinking themselves only working in that one platform of the theater space for those 2 weeks or 3 days, now they can think about the content they're making happening over more time. So it's like Einstein's space-time. Now we're actually not just working in a space, we're working in space-time, and the audience can find their way into it, which is something that previously you had to be initiated to know. You already had to be a ticket buyer to buy a new ticket. And building audiences is the terrible failure of arts organizations. And now we have many more tools to do this. But we don't have the mindset to go with it is the problem.
Yeah, I love that, because it also works from a business context perspective. Mm-hmm. Because if you look in building a business out of what you're doing, you have way more opportunities to monetize it, way more opportunities to engage with possible buyers of what you're doing. And maybe some people are just in the online content. They wouldn't go into the physical event. Right. But you would, if you just focus on the physical event, you would never catch them. But they might be interested in the context or in the content of what you're producing. So if you then provide an online, just to make it simple, version of it to engage, then you can catch them, you can capture them and bring them along your storyline and into your world. And I think
just like,
go ahead.
Just like there's such a thing as an in-app purchase, right? Yeah. You're already in the app and then you buy something more. There can be an in-venue access too. So for one ticket, you get this content. For a higher price, you get a VIP ticket and you get more content. And for a donation or being part of the subscription base, you have access, like Patreon does, to content that is unavailable without that partnership. So you're actually turning your audiences into collaborators as well as stakeholders. You're making them aware of the degree that they are a stakeholder, so that if you're a theater company with a great following, you have a way of monetizing that following, not just by ticket sales, but by all kinds of engagement, consulting, teaching, party throwing. I mean, the skills of people in performance are so multiple, but everybody thinks of that as the side job. And the problem is, in a 21st century economy, there are no side jobs. It's all part of the same effort.
Just out of curiosity, do your students learn the business part of that as well?
Yeah, they learn some of it. They are taking some classes in marketing and some classes in producing as well. The problem is that the business aspect of transmedia content marketing, or there's a wonderful new book I'm recommending. I'm just about halfway through it. It's called Quantum Marketing. It's by I think I have a copy of it. Rajamannar. And he talks about that marketing is over and marketing is only beginning. And the ways to build those relationships are key. And we don't have a lot of infrastructure that I'm aware of, certainly not where I am, that is actually beginning to take that next step in business teaching. Because to talk about marketing, I mean, I often use a term, and I think he uses a similar term in his book, the difference between push marketing and pull marketing. So if I'm pushing content at you, you can push it away. Whereas if I'm pulling you, you have to walk some of the distance yourself. And that level of activity creates much more possibility. It's like a tractor beam, as opposed to like a big sign saying it's over here.
Yeah, I use that a lot, from push to pull. It's super important, and it works. And that also means like your performances, they need to be customer centric or user centered. Whatever you do, it's really towards the people you want to engage, because you will never create a pull effect if you're not making it for them, if you're not making it to meet their needs, dreams, desires, and so on.
Right. Later today, I'm meeting with my adaptation of literature into performance class. I spent the first half of the class studying what is literature and how does it work as a system. They're now in the midst of working on the affordances of medium. And I've listed for them 21 different mediums now available, from VR to AR to puzzle boxes to books with printed on paper, books that are digital, which have live. So a series of mediums, and their job as a group is to do an in-depth analysis of what are these mediums afford, not to the content, but to the audience. So the user, if they're reading a book, for example, they can put in a note in the paper, easy to write. That's an affordance of the medium. Lades, even though they're trying to make it work on ebooks, is still not great, right? So that's an affordance of that medium. Whereas an interactive story gives you the ability to play a character, engage. So they're being asked to think about the venue as a space that is attractive. And, then the idea of like, well, should it be a book? Should it be a game? Should it be a movie? Should it be a play? I see a lot of plays that really ought to be television shows. There's no reason to watch this live. So the affordances of the medium are a factor that is a separate question because it's the audience-centric question, as opposed to the content, which is actually the producer. The producer has the content or the business idea or the product to sell or the class to promote, but it's actually what makes the course or what makes the medium, attractive all by itself.
Love that. I would like to take this as an angle going into your software side business. So you're looking into AR, VR, and a lot of these topics.
Right.
Tell us about what you're doing.
Well, it's still in development, so I don't have a name for it yet. But what we're looking to do is begin to think about giving the audience, the user, a way to create collaborations using the content that they already have in their photographs, in their video, in their written work, in objects, so that people can actually create, create a playground within which they can shape an experience which either becomes an AR journey, can become a VR journey, it can become a gift, it could become a means by which for people to think about the past, think about a city. There's a collaborator that I'm excited about talking more with who's doing immersive journeys within cities so that it could be used in tourism, where you could design a narrative that would give you, if you have one day in Lisbon, say, you can go through the city of Lisbon and explore the history of Lisbon, the people of Lisbon. There might be interactions both with AR, but audio, perhaps actors that come in because you've scheduled an event, and you could have a visceral, immersive experience that will reward you for your commitment to it in a way that a guidebook or hiring a tour guide would not. Yeah.
It sounds super interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's technologically it's an interesting perspective, but specifically on the experience piece and the application of it. I think that's because it's user-centered. And that will be interesting to explore.
Yeah. So let's say you have a child who's going to go visit a city that you've been and they haven't been, and they're going by themselves. You can create a tour of your memories of that place, for them. And right now, how would you do that? You couldn't link it to GPS. It wouldn't be linked to specific sites or photographs. But if there was a way to deliver that was like one creates a PowerPoint in a template. If there was a template for experience design that was usable for people to deliver to each other this type of journey, I think that would be both immersive. It would be a way for getting people to experience that interaction with the user. And certainly if it's personal, like a father to a daughter, or a teacher to their students, or, you could actually say, oh, you're going to go to Graz in Austria. Well, here.
Yeah.
So
I have already a use case for that. So because we moved so often over the last 20 years, what we said is we want to bring our daughter to all the places where we have been living.
Right.
And it's now 4 countries, and only God knows where we will, when she's old enough to do that. Maybe we have been living in more countries. But imagine she could do that. So she's turning 18, getting a phone or whatever is available when she's in that age, which is still 15 years to go. Right. Maybe glasses, and she could experience that. She could figure out, hey, you lived in that city and you lived in that house, and the house is still there, and you worked in that place, and you went into the city center or whatever. So she could experience these things, and following our footsteps. That would be interesting.
And if there's photographs or even AR images, you could go to a town that you used to live and you can't find a certain pharmacy. Yeah. And then you remember, oh, it's now a restaurant, and you can see the restaurant and the pharmacy in layers of time. So it allows, it's all back to Einstein. It's all about space time. So if you begin to engage in time through spaces, you're beginning to afford people a deeper experience, because, truly every year we forget as much as we remember. Maybe we forget more than we remember.
I do, definitely.
And we all do. And so the human experience is constantly being drained of its color. And we want it to be that way because we want to see the colors of the present. But there are times when knowing the complexity and the colors of the past are critical. And I really got the insight about this was in being in Berlin. And I had that one day before the college, and I was trying to soak in Berlin, but I had been late getting back from the airport. And I asked the concierge at the hotel, I said, what can I do? I want to see something. And she said, well, go outside, get that bus in front of the hotel and just take it to the end and then take it back. And so I did. I took it all the way to the end of the line. And then instead of taking the bus back, I walked back. And as I walked back, I was so hungry for knowing more about every street that I was on. I just felt the echoes and could not see the echoes or hear the echoes. And I thought, what if?
Yeah, I've had a similar experience in Hong Kong. I think that would have worked in that way, in the same way. I jumped on this tram line and went back and forth just to see everything in the short time available, because it was a business trip. Yeah, it would work in that setting as well. Cool. Mm-hmm. Speaking about Asia, so you have touched already on it in the beginning. So what's happening? What are you doing in Asia or in China?
Well, a friendship began with a former student of mine who's Chinese, studied with me when I first started teaching transmedia and immersive and games. And she went back to China, and she was working in the film industry and got very excited about the idea of beginning to connect what she had learned in my classes to what was going on potentially in the Chinese entertainment field. So we started collaborating on a number of projects. I had already done one project for a theme park. How long ago is this now? 6-7 years ago, a design for an interactive theme park that was part game and part immersive theater. So I had some I had some visibility there, but I had no connection until she and I began collaborating. And then we brought in a third collaborator. So Wan Zhao, Ding Wei, and myself created a company called White Horse Immersive. And we began by attaching ourselves to projects where the animation field was looking to build connections with physical, real-world audiences to their media projects. The first of which is a piece called The Wishing God, which is a film that comes out later this year. Everything's been pushed down. Everything would be open by now, but that's a familiar story. And what we've done is we've created an immersive theater piece that takes the story elements of The Wishing God, which is largely about a purple monster and a little boy. It's a great little film. And we take the story so that the audience can come in and play through different spaces that are essentially a sequel to the movie. So at the end of the movie, there are some things left hanging. Those things can be completed in the immersive. And so among the things that we're in the midst of talks about is there are theaters that are where movie theaters are. So people could go see the film, have lunch, and then go play through the immersive piece. Yeah. So the connecting between the story journey of the film to the immersive would be exciting. We've also just developed, we got a request to develop this as a theater play, like a traditional proscenium, which was an interesting challenge because we had to take what had been designed for an audience to play through, and actually the audience in the play version are the main characters. So we had to create the characters within the theater play. And it was a really good example of you can move between mediums, but there are things that need to change. So that's one project. We have another project which is developing a piece, such an amazing book series called Monsters in the Forbidden City, which we are developing as an immersive theater piece that also might connect, because it's being developed with lots of technology. It might actually be a cool exhibition space as well, with elements of the film series that have been developed. We have another project that we're looking for a client. We're developing not only our Party B projects, but our Party A projects. So our Party A, which are our original IP, our original intellectual property. One is a Jules Verne piece, which is a time travel piece using one of his early stories as an immersive, where I took the Jules Verne story and I kind of scooped out the central characters, because those will be the audience, and they'll move through the content with all the secondary characters. And so it'll be one part escape room, one part immersive theater, but also because the audience need to take on roles, it'll also be a live action role play. It'll also be a LARP. So it's a LARP within an immersive theater, within an escape room, and all based on an old Jules Verne play, and at the same time using lots of cinema and lots of VR. So we're talking to people in the theme park industry there, which is burgeoning, not only there but everywhere. But so that's the other one. And the other one, the other original piece is an escape room that we've designed for a hotel in Beijing, which we're collaborating with a film company that's looking to develop a film set in our escape room. And that's all based on an Italian play from the 1920s.
So why is all of that happening in China? Is there a specific reason that's happening in China and not, let's say, in Germany?
I don't know. I mean, for me, China is where these ideas are already very alive. There is a lot of theater there, but a lot of it has been coming in very traditional ways. They're very excited by, the people in the media companies are very interested in creating deeper engagement with audiences, and immersive offers that. I think they also have a real appetite for innovation. And I think often when one talks about innovation in performing arts or in creating collaborations between traditional theater, film, interactive media, people in the West are often very resistant to that because they're thought of as very different things. There's some resistance in China to virtual reality, but I think that's beginning to change too with COVID. Previously, people in China were thought of, people in headsets as something that you do at home and not social. And they're much more interested in getting out of the house and doing something that's social. Yeah. But if the technology moves towards more projection mapping and moves towards AR and becomes more of a game where people build communities outside of the main project and after the main project, I think the real key is not to think of the venue or the platform as the only place to gather the audience. If one begins to think about creating teams and groups and fans and players, people who are playing while other people are in the space. I mean, for the Jules Verne project, I'm really interested in there being a live player and another player who comes in either on something like Twitch or some other platform which is designed for the game itself, so that you could play at home and you can play in live, and then there can be information from the home player and the live player. And I think that is not, I don't think that's surprising for younger audiences. And I think the definition of younger audiences is not under 20, it's under 30. So I think that, and there are some, of us who are over 30 who are also interested in it. But I think there's a very much larger market of people who were brought up on video games and expectations of the facility of mobile to be interactive. So it's not like they're busting into new territory. They're just unsatisfied with the territory that they've inherited, and they want media and engagement that seems more like they want to experience it.
Yeah. So translating that to business. So one thing is the market demand is there. How do you see it from, and we talked a bit about that before recording, from an ecosystem perspective, because there are large companies investing into these topics. Right. It's not like small players who are saying, hey, I have a couple of bucks on the side and I will invest into this. They see this as a business opportunity.
Yeah. The conversations are very forward thinking there. I mean, if I had to summarize the core experience I'm having in conversations in China, or my partner is having in China, is that people are looking forward, not looking back. And because they're looking forward, they are noticing the innovation that is happening in Europe, in the United States, everywhere. And they are wanting to be part of what is coming next, because it just seems logical that they would be doing that. And there are industries like film and theater and traditional theater which have a target right now because currently because they require large auditoriums, right? Yeah. And also because they are not as welcoming, beckoning, pulling as other mediums. And when you see market shares in film disappearing because of, what's happening in the US with theater attendance for movies, with Warner Brothers pulling in its content to stream on HBO Max, one might say that film producing based on theater auditorium presentation is actually becoming niche, and that streaming is becoming more core. And streaming that is interactive will have a different place in the ability to engage in the audience. So right now it's unsustainable. Everyone is paying for multiple subscription models for their streaming, and movies are being financed based on ticket sales.
Yeah.
But the only place that that's still happening is in China and in Asia, where large auditoriums are actually beginning to be, I think they already are, the largest number of ticket sales are sold currently for films in Asia. And Asia has always limited the number of Western films that can come in. And now they're really investing in their own film industry. So just like we're seeing China beginning to assert its awareness of its intelligence, its quality, and its dominance, we're seeing this happen in entertainment, where in both of these projects that I'm working with, even though clearly I'm a Westerner, these are Chinese IPs. These are not, we're not bringing in something that was developed in Hollywood. There are some collaborations like between Netflix and Pearl Studios in China, but I think we're going to see more and more of original Chinese work being exported internationally, and less abilities for Hollywood budgets to be based on ticket sales in auditoriums. It's going to be based on streaming, and streaming is going to be based on engagement. And so we're already into the future. A lot of people don't recognize the impact. I mean, just like theater had to deal with the fact that television emerged, even more so than film production. Well, first it had to deal with film, then it had to deal with television. And now television, because it's streaming and it's interactive, is enabling a lot of types of content to sort of leapfrog the old paradigms.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what's happening with the business models, which need to change towards that direction as well.
Especially the marketing budgets. Marketing budgets are already declining. Marketing VPs are disappearing all over. That's why this book was so interesting to me, because there is beginning to be a shift, but we're not quite into next. We're leaving yesterday, but we're in this morbid interregnum in between the past and the present. Whereas in China, I feel like they're much closer to more of a confidence in the future than I think that we see in the West.
Love that. I would like to transition now to a couple of questions I ask every guest, which are not related to what we have talked until now,
Sure.
which then leads us to the finish. So if you could work with a project that's experienced by every human being on Earth, what project would it be? What project would you choose, and why would you choose it?
That's currently being experienced by everyone on Earth?
No, yeah, whenever you want. A new thing. You can invent it.
A way to better use the photographs that are accumulating on our hard drives every day by the thousands. There is nothing that I have found that is truly intuitive, useful, and it seems like since we all moved towards taking pictures with our iPhones or our Androids, that we now have multiple shots of where there's only one picture that's good. We haven't necessarily, some of us have edited those, but we are increasingly, I'm looking over here, I've got an external hard drive that is only for photographs. And truly, it could be a smaller hard drive if I had a software to deal with that. So that's what I would do. That's my one, please fix this. Oh, world, please fix this.
That's cool. Looking forward, where do you think will you be in a year from now?
Well, we have a new space that's just opened in Hangzhou. It's the Shangshan Art Center, and it's two large spaces that are wonderful for immersive storytelling, for education. We're also interested in developing an institute of theater and immersive and interactive media. So I'm thinking that in a year from now, I'll probably be in Hangzhou most of the year or a lot of the year, because it feels like that's going to be a very good place to develop new projects and a good way to make a better connection for myself culturally to the society that I'm working in.
Cool. I will follow that on Instagram and so on. So looking a little bit on how do you keep yourself up to date? So what are the different information you consume and how do you consume them?
Well, a great thing that happened last summer for me, I mean, this has been true for me for a while, and the College of Extraordinary Experiences, shout out to our place of meeting, was a good place for me to begin to meet people from all over the world. I think prior to 2018, my context and content was largely US based. So the friendships and connections that I've made with you and others from the college over the 2 years that I attended and continued to meet with people afterwards was very valuable. The next major piece for me was last summer, the college asked me to create a workshop in live performance and interactive media. And for the workshop, I was given funding to bring in people from all over the world. And I began to make connections to people in the virtual reality community who came in and did talks with the students and showed some of the software. And we engaged in conversations that have since last summer really continued. It's an extraordinary, interesting moment in the technology of live performance in media. Projects like Pandora X from the Double I Studios, projects like The Tempest in VR from the Under Presents, where live actors are performing in virtual reality. So that community of people have put me in a radar of immersive virtual reality, augmented reality, also experience design, design thinking, and the more experimental theater people that I already knew from years ago. So with all of these people both influencing me either via Twitter or via Instagram or via Facebook or via LinkedIn, I just find that I have a steady stream of information, which, like the photographs, needs parsing. So, and the other thing I really do get, I don't learn so much about the emerging world from my students, but as I teach them about it, they sometimes will echo with popular culture elements that are similar or different. And that's been true for 10 years. So, I mean, the best way to learn something is to teach it. And when you're teaching it to young people who are awakened, they will use their networks of curiosity to bring you in further to either the affordances of new mediums like Discord, which is an amazing app, which a lot of people don't know about, or ways to sort of facilitate multiple versions of online playgrounds.
Yeah.
Long answer. Sorry.
That's good. That's good. That's the good thing when you do podcast recording, you can choose.
That's right.
Awesome. Thank you very much for spending that long time with me. So how can people reach out to you? Where can people find you?
I've got a website, davidbassuk.com, and also just email me, or LinkedIn is also terrific. Yeah. LinkedIn will have both ways to talk, and you can look at various websites of both the theater company as well as my own personal website.
Yeah, and I will put the links into the show note as well.
Yeah. I'm also findable at Purchase College as well.
Yes.
So
cool. Thank you very much, David. It was a pleasure talking to you. I could spend like hours and hours talking. It's really interesting. It's always a pleasure having conversation with you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Jens. Thanks for inviting me to do this.
Thanks.
Take me to another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land, magical, magical land. To another place where the fairy tales don't end.